The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, like a jewel made of steel and glass. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated seats, watching a human who stood alone at the center platform. Ambassador Marcus Webb kept his hands clasped behind his back, his gray suit perfectly pressed, his face composed. He had been standing there for 3 hours while the Jatek presented their demands. High Commander Velcroth was massive, even by Jatek standards. His scales shimmered purple and black under the chamber lights, and his forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke. The translator device rendered his hissing voice into perfect galactic common. The Jatek Dominion has been patient with the humans, Velcroth announced, his words echoing through the vast chamber. We have watched them expand into territories that rightfully belong to older, wiser civilizations. We have tolerated their presence on worlds they have no business colonizing. But our patience has limits. Marcus said nothing. His blue eyes tracked every movement the Jatek commander made. Therefore, Velcroth continued, raising one clawed hand, the Dominion demands that humanity immediately surrender control of 3 colony worlds. New Harmony, Proxima Tertius, and Eden's Gate will be transferred to Dominion authority within 30 standard days. The human populations will be relocated at their own expense. This is not negotiable. A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. Some species looked uncomfortable. Others seemed relieved that the Jatek anger was directed at someone else for once. The council speaker, a floating crystalline being named Harmonious Note, chimed softly. Ambassador Webb, you have heard the Dominion's position. What is Earth's response? Marcus stepped forward to the microphone. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. No. Velcroth's head snapped toward him. What did you say? I said no. Marcus repeated. Earth will not surrender those worlds. 12 million human citizens live on those planets. They built homes there. They started families. They have children who were born under those skies. We will not abandon them because you demand it. The Jatek commander laughed, a harsh barking sound. You speak as if you have a choice, human. The Dominion controls 847 worlds. Our military could crush your entire species in a matter of months. You are primitives who only recently learned to travel between stars. You use technology you barely comprehend, copied from superior species. We comprehend it well enough. Marcus said calmly. Do you? Velcroth descended from his platform and walked toward Marcus, his claws clicking on the metal floor. He towered over the human, nearly 3 meters tall. Tell me, Ambassador, how many wars has your species won against galactic powers? How many battle fleets do you command? The Dominion has been conquering worlds for 10,000 years. What have you accomplished in your brief, insignificant existence? Marcus looked up at the alien commander without flinching. We survived. Survived? Velcroth leaned down, bringing his face close to Marcus's. His breath smelled like sulfur. Survived is not the same as thrived, little human. You survived because we permitted it. You exist because we have not yet decided to eliminate you. Is that a threat, Commander? It is a fact. Velcroth straightened and addressed the council. The Jatek Dominion has been more than reasonable. We could simply take what we want. Instead, we come here to this council and ask politely. We follow the rules. But if humanity refuses, then we will have no choice but to enforce our claim by force. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. The representative from the Keltara Collective, a species that had been conquered by the Jatek 2 centuries ago, would not meet Marcus's eyes. Harmonious Note chimed again. The council must vote on this matter. If the Dominion's claim is deemed legitimate, Earth will be required to comply. All in favor of supporting the Jatek claim. Marcus watched his hands, tentacles, and appendages rose throughout the chamber. 29 votes in favor. The council was supposed to protect smaller species, but everyone knew the truth. The Jatek were too powerful to oppose. All opposed? 11 votes against. Not enough. The motion passes. Harmonious Note announced, sounding genuinely sorrowful. Earth has 30 standard days to begin the transfer of the disputed colonies. This session is concluded. Marcus stood perfectly still as the other delegates began to file out. Some looked at him with pity. Others avoided his gaze entirely. Only Velcroth approached him, that same mocking expression on his reptilian face. "You should have accepted when I was being reasonable human," the commander said softly. "Now you will learn what happens when lesser species defy the Dominion. Perhaps after we settle those 3 worlds, we will find reason to claim a few more. Maybe Earth itself." Marcus finally showed emotion. A small smile touched his lips. "Commander Velcroth, I need to tell you something important." "What could you possibly have to say that matters?" "You don't understand what you're awakening," Marcus said quietly. "You think humans are weak because we prefer diplomacy. You think we're primitive because we've only been in space for 200 years. But do you know why humanity survived long enough to reach the stars?" Velcroth's eyes narrowed. "Luck." "No," Marcus said. "Earth is a death world, Commander. Our planet tried to kill us every single day. Predators that could tear us apart, diseases that wiped out millions, whether that could freeze or bake us, earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, droughts. And do you know what else tried to kill us?" "I care little for each other," Marcus interrupted. "We spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing other humans. We created weapons that could level cities. We developed strategies and tactics for every kind of warfare imaginable. Naval battles, air superiority, guerrilla warfare, siege tactics, psychological operations. We built bombs that could crack our own planet open if we were foolish enough to use them all at once." He took a step closer to the towering alien. "We didn't climb to the top of Earth's food chain by being reasonable, Commander. We did it by being the most dangerous, adaptable, relentless creatures our world ever produced. I became a diplomat because I wanted to prove we could be better than that we could talk instead of fight. And now you threaten me?" Velcroth laughed again. "With words? How human." "I'm not threatening you," Marcus said. "I'm warning you. If you attack those colonies, if you hurt those people, you won't be fighting human diplomats anymore. You'll be fighting what we used to be, what we're still capable of being when someone pushes us too far. I look forward to it." Velcroth said, turning away. 30 days, human. Then we take what is ours." Marcus watched the Jatek commander leave. Around him, the chamber emptied until he stood alone on the platform. His hands were shaking now, though he'd kept them steady during the confrontation. He pulled out a small communication device and keyed in an encrypted channel to Earth. "Web to Earth Command. The Council voted against us. The Jatek have given us 30 days to comply with the transfer. I don't think they're going to wait that long." The response came quickly. "Understood, Ambassador. What are your orders?" "Prepare evacuation protocols for all 3 colonies. Get as many people off those worlds as possible, quietly. Don't let the Jatek know what we're doing." "Will they really attack?" Marcus closed his eyes. "Yes, they will. Velcroth wants to make an example of us. Show the galaxy what happens when you refuse the Dominion. Then what do? We get ready," Marcus said. "And we hope I'm wrong about what happens next." 23 days later, Marcus was in his quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel when the emergency broadcast came through. He was dreaming of home, of the ranch in Montana where he'd grown up, when the alarms jolted him awake. "All personnel, this is a Priority 1 emergency broadcast," the ship's computer announced. "We have confirmed reports of Jatek military action against human colony Proxima Tertius. Orbital bombardment detected. Multiple impacts confirmed." Marcus threw on his uniform and raced the bridge. The crew was already there, gathered around a holographic display, showing feeds from Proxima Tertius. What they saw made Marcus's blood run cold. The planet was burning. Jatek warships hung in orbit, their plasma cannons firing in precise patterns. Each shot struck a population center. The capital city of New Landing vanished in a ball of fire, then River Valley, then Hope Springs. One by one, the cities where humans had built their lives were erased from existence. "How many?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. The communications officer looked up, tears streaming down her face. "The colony had 12,400 people. Evacuation got out about 6,000. The rest..." She couldn't finish. "Show me everything," Marcus said. For the next hour, he watched the massacre unfold. The Jatek were methodical, efficient. They didn't stop with the cities. They struck the farms, the research stations, the small towns scattered across the continents. When they were done, Proxima Tertius was a smoldering ruin, its atmosphere choked with ash and radiation. Then the communication came through. Velcrota's face filled the screen, and Marcus could see the cruel satisfaction in his eyes. Ambassador Webb, the commander, said, "As you can see, the Dominion does not make empty threats. Proxima Tertius is now Dominion territory. You have 7 days to evacuate the remaining 2 colonies. If you refuse, they will share this world's fate." Marcus stood slowly. Everyone on the bridge was looking at him, waiting for orders, waiting for him to say something that would make sense of this horror. "Record this," Marcus said to the communications officer. "Direct channel to Velcroth. Make sure it's sent on every frequency the Dominion uses." He waited until the recording light blinked on, then spoke directly to the camera. His voice was steady, but there was something in his eyes that made his own crew step back. "Commander Velcroth, this is Ambassador Marcus Webb. You just killed 6,000 human civilians. Men, women, and children who never threatened you, who never raised a weapon against your people. You murdered them to make a point." He leaned forward. "So, let me make a point of my own. I'm done being a diplomat. As of this moment, I'm requesting Earth Command authorize me as Supreme Theater Commander under Total War Protocols. And when they approve it, and they will approve it, I'm going to show you something." Marcus's smile was terrible to see. "You want to know what humans are capable of when we're pushed too far? Commander, you wanted war? Then you're going to get war. Not the civilized kind that follows your precious galactic rules. Not the kind where we meet your fleets in honorable battle. You're going to get the kind of war that Earth perfected over 10,000 years of practice." He stood at attention, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. "I said you don't understand what you're awakening. Commander, now you're going to learn. And when I'm done, when your empire is shattered and your worlds are burning, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember that you had a choice. You chose war. So now you'll see your worlds reduced to cinders, just like you did to ours." He gestured, and the transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Finally, the tactical officer spoke. "Sir, that message, you just declared war on the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Their entire military, their 847 worlds. Earth only has 32 colonies and maybe 500 warships. They'll crush us." Marcus walked to the viewport and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Proxima Tertius was still burning. Somewhere out there, 6,000 of his people had died screaming. "Maybe they will," he said softly, "but not before I make them pay for every single life they took today." Send a message to Earth Command. Request authorization for Total War Protocols. And tell them to start activating everyone who served in the old wars. We're going to need people who remember how humans fought before we became civilized. His reflection in the viewport looked like a stranger. The diplomat was gone. In his place stood something older, something that had been dormant for 2 centuries. Something that should have stayed dormant. "Get me a fleet," Marcus Webb said. "And may whatever gods exist forgive us for what happens next." Earth's War Council met in a bunker 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room had been constructed during the old wars, back when humans still fought each other instead of exploring the stars. For 200 years, it had been a museum. Now it was active again, and that fact alone told everyone how grave things had become. Marcus Webb stood at the head of the table, no longer wearing a diplomat's suit. Instead, he wore the dark gray uniform of Earth Defense Force, with rank insignia that hadn't been used since the unification. Supreme Theater Commander. In the old days, it meant someone who had authority over entire continents during wartime. Now it meant he could command humanity's entire military force. Around the table sat the leaders of Earth's government and military. Prime Minister Sarah Chun looked exhausted, her hands folded in front of her. Admiral James Rodriguez commanded the fleet. General Patricia Morrison led ground forces. Dr. Yuki Tanaka represented the intelligence services. They had all watched the footage from Proxima Tertius. They had all seen what the Jatek were capable of. The authorization is granted, Chin said quietly. Total war protocols are now active. Commander Webb, Earth's military forces are yours to direct as you see fit. We have only one question. Can we win? Marcus looked at each of them in turn. Not if we fight them the way they expect. The Jatek Dominion has 847 worlds, 10,000 warships, and 10,000 years' experience conquering other species. If we meet them in traditional fleet engagements, they'll destroy us. Then how do we fight them? Admiral Rodriguez asked. We fight them the way humans have always fought, when we were outnumbered and outgunned. Marcus said. He activated the holographic display at the center of the table. It showed the galaxy, with Jatek territory marked in red. Human space was a tiny blue cluster by comparison. We use every advantage we have. We study their weaknesses. We strike where they're vulnerable. And we never, ever fight fair. General Morrison leaned forward. Explain. Marcus pulled up files on the Jatek military structure. For the past 50 years, human intelligence has been studying every species in the galaxy. We know how they think, how they fight, what they fear. The Jatek are warriors, but they're predictable. They believe in honor, in meeting enemies directly, in crushing resistance with overwhelming force. That sounds like every military ever. Rodriguez said. Exactly, Marcus replied. They fight like humans used to fight 300 years ago. Large fleets, large battles, clear objectives. But we evolved past that. We learned guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, psychological operations. We learned how to turn an enemy's strength into a weakness. He zoomed in on the Jatek supply network. Look at this. 847 worlds, all connected by a centralized logistics system. Everything automated. Food, fuel, ammunition, all moved by AI-controlled ships following predictable routes. They've been using the same system for 2,000 years because it has never failed them. Dr. Tanaka smiled. Because no one has ever tried to infiltrate it. Right, Marcus said. The Jatek view cyber warfare as dishonorable. They don't defend against it properly because they assume everyone follows the same codes of conduct they do. That's their first weakness. What about their fleets? Rodriguez asked. Even if we disrupt their supply lines, they still have enough firepower to devastate every human world. Marcus's expression hardened. Then we make sure they never get the chance to use it. We're not going to defend our worlds, Admiral. We're going to attack theirs. The room went silent. You want to invade Jatek territory? Chin said slowly. Marcus, that's suicide. Not invade. Marcus corrected. Destabilize. The Dominion controls 847 worlds, but most of those worlds didn't join willingly. They were conquered. The populations are oppressed, furious, waiting for any sign that the Dominion can be beaten. We're going to give them that sign. He pulled up intelligence reports on Jatek-occupied worlds. 312 of their worlds have active resistance movements. Another 200 have populations that would revolt if they believed they had a chance. The Jatek maintain control through fear and military presence, but their military is stretched thin. They rely on their reputation more than actual force. So, we shatter that reputation. General Morrison said, understanding dawning in her eyes. Exactly, Marcus confirmed. We strike soft targets. Supply depots, automated mining stations, communications relays. Nothing with significant military defense. We move fast, hit hard, and vanish before they can respond. Every attack is broadcast across the galaxy. Every victory shows the other conquered species that the Dominion can bleed. Admiral Rodriguez studied the display. It could work, but we need precise intelligence on their positions, their patrol routes, their response times. We need to know where they're exposed before we strike. We have it, Dr. Tanaka said. She activated her own display. Human intelligence has been inside Jatek systems for 20 years. We have detailed maps of every installation, every patrol route, every weakness in their defensive network. We did it because we wanted to understand them, to be prepared for any threat. Now we use that knowledge as a weapon. There's something else. Marcus said, the Jatek have a psychological vulnerability. They're a warrior culture. Everything is about honor, strength, and dominance. When they win, they're unstoppable. But when they lose, when they're humiliated, they become erratic. Their commanders make errors. They overreact. They divide their forces trying to respond to threats everywhere at once. He pulled up a tactical analysis. We're going to infuriate them. We're going to hit them in ways that insult their pride, and we're going to use that rage against them. Prime Minister Chin stood and walked the display. She looked at the red territory, so vast compared to humanity's small presence. You're talking about fighting an entire empire with psychological warfare and sabotage. What happens when they get tired of chasing us and just start destroying human worlds one by one? They'll try, Marcus said quietly. That's why we evacuated as many people as we could from our vulnerable colonies. That's why our remaining colonies are fortified and ready to fight. But more importantly, that's why we're going to move faster than they can respond. By the time they organize a strike against us, we'll have already hit 10 of their worlds. He looked around the table. I'm not going to deceive you. People are going to die, human and alien. This kind of war is ugly, brutal, and exhausting, but it's the only path to victory. The Jatek have numbers and firepower. We have speed, intelligence, and the element of surprise. And rage. General Morrison added softly, they killed 6,000 of our people. Every soldier, every pilot, every Marine knows someone who died on Proxima Tertius. That's fuel for this war. Yes, Marcus agreed, but we can't let rage make us reckless. We fight smart. We fight cold. We do what needs to be done, and nothing more. The goal isn't to exterminate the Jatek. It's to break their empire so thoroughly that they beg for peace. Admiral Rodriguez stood. When do we start? 3 days. Marcus said, I need time to brief the fleet commanders and establish our initial targets. We'll strike 6 different locations simultaneously, all in the outer regions of Dominion space. Supply depots, automated mining stations, and 1 major communications relay. By the time their military responds, we'll be gone. He pulled up another display, showing fleet deployments. We're reorganizing our ships into rapid strike groups. Nothing larger than 5 ships per group. They jump in, hit the target, jump out. No prolonged engagements. No heroic last stands. If it looks like the enemy is going to intercept you, you retreat. Survival is more important than any individual victory. What about you? Chin asked, where will you be? With the 3rd strike group. Marcus said, I'm not commanding this war from a secure bunker. I need to be out there seeing what works and what doesn't, making decisions in real time. Dr. Tanaka frowned. That's a risk, Commander, if you're captured or killed. 3 days later, Marcus stood on the bridge of the EDS Retribution, watching the countdown timer approach 0. Around him, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. They were professionals trained for exactly this kind of operation, but Marcus could see the tension in their shoulders, the way their hands moved just a fraction too quickly over their controls. All strike groups report ready. The communications officer said, awaiting your order, sir. Marcus looked at the tactical display. 6 different targets spread across 3 sectors of Jatek space. 6 different strike groups, each waiting for his command. After this, there was no going back. Humanity would be at war with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. He thought about Proxima Tertius. About 6,000 people who would never go home. About children who died because someone wanted to make a political statement. All ships. Marcus said, clearly, execute jump. Show them what humans do when you threaten our families. The Retribution jumped into hyperspace, and the war began. When they emerged, they were in the Keltheros system, home to one of the Dominion's major supply depots. The facility was immense, a space station size of a small moon surrounded by automated defense platforms. It supplied 40 different Jatek military bases. Defense platforms activating. The tactical officer reported, we have incoming fire. Don't bother returning fire. Marcus ordered, weapons. Transmit the override codes Dr. Tanaka provided. Let's see if 20 years of intelligence work was worth it. The weapons officer entered the codes. For a moment, Nothing happened. Then the defense platform stopped firing. Their targeting systems went dark. Then they rotated slowly and began firing on the supply depot itself. It worked! Someone whispered in amazement. Helm, take us in close. Marcus said, Communications, broadcast this on all Dominion frequencies. I want everyone to see this. As the retribution approached, the defense platform systematically demolished the supply depot's docking bays, weapons arrays, and reactor cores. The massive station began breaking apart, sections spinning off into space. 20 years of supplies gone in 15 minutes. Sir, JATEC patrol ships are responding, the tactical officer reported. ETA, 12 minutes. More than enough time. Marcus said, Launch the message drones, then plot a jump to the rally point. Let's go visit our next target. The drones launched, spreading in different directions. Each one carried a recording of the attack, showing how easily humans had turned Dominion technology against itself. Within hours, those recordings would spread across the galaxy. As the retribution jumped away, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Reports were already coming in from the other strike groups. All 6 attacks had succeeded. 0 human casualties. 6 major Dominion facilities destroyed. Communications, open a channel. Marcus said, Direct to High Commander Velcroth, wherever he is. When the channel opened, Marcus spoke directly into the camera. His voice was composed, almost conversational. Hello, Commander. This is Marcus Webb. Remember me? I'm the diplomat you threatened. The primitive you said couldn't possibly stand against your empire. He gestured at the footage playing behind him, showing the destroyed supply depot. Today, we destroyed 6 of your facilities. Tomorrow, we'll destroy 6 more. The day after that, another 6. And we'll keep going until you understand what you've done. He leaned forward. You wanted war, Commander. You wanted to show the galaxy what happens when someone defies the Dominion. So now I'm going to show you what happens when you threaten humanity. You said you wanted to see our worlds reduced to cinders. Then watch as we reduce yours. Marcus smiled, and it was not a kind expression. You're fighting the species that invented total warfare, Commander, and we're just getting started. See you tomorrow. The transmission ended. Around him, the bridge crew was silent, watching him with something like awe. Set course for the next target. Marcus said quietly, And someone find me every piece of intelligence we have on JATEC military psychology. I want to know exactly what provokes them, because we're going to use it. As the retribution jumped through hyperspace, Marcus stood at the viewport watching the stars blur past. He thought about what he'd become, about the line between necessary and monstrous, about whether winning was worth the cost. Then he thought about Proxima Tertius again, about children who would never grow up, about families who died together, and he pushed those thoughts away, buried them deep where they couldn't make him hesitate. There would be time for guilt later. For now, there was only war. 2 months into the war, High Commander Velcroth paced in his command center aboard the flagship Eternal Dominance. The room was designed to be imposing, with walls that displayed tactical readouts of the entire Dominion. Those displays had become agonizing to look at. Red warning indicators dotted the map like a spreading infection. Another attack, his second-in-command reported, her voice tight with frustration. The mining station at Taralka. 3 human ships appeared, disabled our defenses, demolished the station, and jumped away before our patrol could respond. That's the 43rd attack in 60 days. Velcroth snarled. 43 facilities destroyed. How are these primitives moving through our space so freely? We don't know, Commander. They appear to have detailed intelligence on all our positions. They know where we patrol when we patrol, and they specifically target locations with minimal defense. Velcroth slammed one fist on the command console. They're cowards. They refuse to meet us in honorable combat. They strike from the shadows and flee before we can engage them. With respect, Commander, it's effective, his tactical officer said carefully. Each attack destroys resources we need and emboldens resistance movements on our conquered worlds. We're seeing uprisings on 17 different planets. Populations that have been obedient for centuries are suddenly refusing orders, sabotaging equipment, striking our garrisons. Then eliminate them. Velcroth commanded. Make examples of the rebels. Show them the price of defiance. We have, Commander, but it only worsens the situation. The humans are broadcasting footage of our responses across the galaxy. They're calling us monsters. Other species are beginning to question whether the Dominion is as formidable as we claim. Velcroth stared at the tactical display, his fists clenched. He had anticipated a conventional war, fleet engagements where his superior numbers would overwhelm the humans. Instead, the humans were everywhere and nowhere, striking and vanishing like phantoms. They had turned his own infrastructure against him, infiltrated systems that had been secure for millennia, and done it all without losing a single ship. What does intelligence say about their base of operations? 2 months into the war, High Commander Velcroth paced in his command center aboard the flagship Eternal Dominance. The room was designed to be imposing, with walls that displayed tactical readouts of the entire Dominion. Those displays had become agonizing to look at. Red warning indicators dotted the map like a spreading infection. Another attack, his second-in-command reported, her voice tight with frustration. The mining station at Taralka. 3 human ships appeared, disabled our defenses, demolished the station, and jumped away before a patrol could respond. That's the 43rd attack in 60 days. Velcroth snarled. 43 facilities destroyed. How are these primitives moving through our space so freely? We don't know, Commander. They appear to have detailed intelligence on all our positions. They know where we patrol, when we patrol, and they specifically target locations with minimal defense. Velcroth slammed one fist on the command console. They're cowards. They refuse to meet us in honorable combat. They strike from the shadows and flee before we can engage them. With respect, Commander, it's effective. His tactical officer said carefully. Each attack destroys resources we need and emboldens resistance movements on our conquered worlds. We're seeing uprisings on 17 different planets. Populations that have been obedient for centuries are suddenly refusing orders, sabotaging equipment, striking our garrisons. Then eliminate them. Velcroth commanded. Make examples of the rebels. Show them the price of defiance. We have, Commander, but it only worsens the situation. The humans are broadcasting footage of our responses across the galaxy. They're calling us monsters. Other species are beginning to question whether the Dominion is as formidable as we claim. Velcroth stared at the tactical display, his fists clenched. He had anticipated a conventional war, fleet engagements where his superior numbers would overwhelm the humans. Instead, the humans were everywhere and nowhere, striking and vanishing like phantoms. They had turned his own infrastructure against him, infiltrated systems that had been secure for millennia, and done it all without losing a single ship. What does intelligence say about their base of operations? We believe they're operating from mobile command vessels constantly moving through hyperspace. They never remain in one system long enough for us to track them. A communication alert sounded. Velcroth's scales paled when he saw the source. The Dominion Council, the ruling body that he answered to. This was not going to be pleasant. The holographic images of 5 Jetek elders appeared before him. Supreme Council Member Atan spoke first, his ancient voice crackling with barely contained fury. Explain, High Commander, why a species we outnumber 50 to 1 is systematically dismantling our infrastructure while we do nothing to stop them? Velcroth forced himself to remain composed. The humans are using dishonorable tactics. Supreme One, they refuse to engage in proper warfare. They strike targets with minimal defense and withdraw before we can respond. Then adapt. Another council member snapped. Or are you telling me that the finest military commander in the Dominion cannot defeat a species that only began space travel 2 centuries ago? They are more sophisticated than we anticipated, Velcroth admitted. Our intelligence underestimated their capabilities. Your intelligence failed. Rattan corrected coldly. Your arrogance led you to attack their colony without proper assessment of their military capability. Now we are at war with an enemy we do not understand, and you seem incapable of stopping them. Give me time, Supreme One. I will track them down, and you have had 2 months. Rattan interrupted. In that time, 43 of our facilities have been destroyed. The humans broadcast each attack to the entire galaxy. Our subject species grow restless. Our allies question our strength. Even the Galactic Council speaks of sanctions against us for our actions on Proxima Tertius. Velcroth's anger flared. That was a legitimate military action. They refused our demands. It was a massacre of civilians, another council member said, and now it has given the humans the moral authority to wage this war. Every species in the galaxy sees us as the aggressors, them as the victims fighting for survival. You have given them exactly what they needed. I will end this war, Supreme Ones. I swear it on my honor. See that you do, Ratan said, because if you cannot, the Council will find someone who can. End this, Velcroth, before it ends you. The transmission cut off, leaving Velcroth alone with his staff. They all carefully avoided meeting his eyes. Assemble the War Council, all fleet commanders, intelligence directors, and tactical specialists. I want every mind in the Dominion focused on one problem: how to defeat Marcus Webb. On the bridge of the Retribution, Marcus studied the latest intelligence reports with quiet satisfaction. The Jatek were responding exactly as he had predicted. They were furious, frustrated, and making mistakes. Their fleet was scattered across 50 systems, trying to protect everything at once. Their commanders were being disciplined for failures, creating paranoia and internal conflict. Perfect. Sir, incoming transmission, the communications officer said. It's flagged as urgent. Sources Jatek territory. Let's see it. The image that appeared was not Velcroth. Instead, it showed a Kelthara, one of the species of Dominion had conquered centuries ago. The alien's blue skin was marked with scars, and his eyes held a desperate hope. Human fleet, this is Resistance Cell 17 on Keldar Prime. We intercepted your broadcasts. We know you're fighting the Dominion. We want to help. Marcus leaned forward. I'm listening. We have intelligence on Dominion military installations in our sector, positions, patrol routes, defense capabilities. We can help you strike targets that will damage them significantly. In return, we ask only that you give us weapons and support. Help us free our world. This was the moment Marcus had been waiting for. The Dominion's conquered subjects were reaching out, ready to rebel. The question was whether to accept their assistance and risk being drawn into dozens of simultaneous uprisings. Dr. Tanaka, what's our assessment of the Kelthara resistance? The intelligence officer pulled up files. They're legitimate, sir. Operating for 3 decades. Primarily peaceful resistance until now. If we support them, other cells on other worlds will likely reach out as well, which means spreading our forces even thinner. Admiral Rodriguez noted, we're already strained hitting multiple targets, but it also means the Dominion has to spread their forces. Marcus countered, right now, they're trying to locate us. If 20 worlds suddenly erupt in rebellion, they'll have to choose between chasing us and holding their empire together. He made his decision. Open a channel to the Kelthara. When the connection was established, Marcus spoke clearly. Resistance Cell 17, this is Supreme Commander Marcus Webb. We will provide you with weapons and tactical support. In return, you provide us with intelligence and coordinate your actions with our operations. When we strike Dominion targets in your sector, you strike at the same time. Make them fight on 2 fronts. The Kelthara's expression showed pure relief. Thank you, Commander. You don't know what this means to us. We've waited so long for someone to stand against the Dominion. We're not just standing against them. We're dismantling them piece by piece, world by world, until they beg us to stop. Over the next 3 weeks, 17 different resistance cells reached out to the human fleet. Marcus provided each one with weapons, equipment, and coordination. He didn't offer them false hope. He told them plainly that many would die, that the Dominion would retaliate viciously, that this was going to be grueling and merciless. Every single cell agreed anyway. They had endured Jatek rule for too long. Now they saw a chance for freedom, and they were willing to die for it. The results were dramatic. When the human Fifth Strike Group struck a weapons depot in the Vrelka system, the local Kelthara resistance simultaneously sabotaged the planetary defense grid. When the second strike group demolished the communications relay, resistance fighters on 3 nearby worlds launched coordinated assaults on Dominion garrisons. The Jatek military was overwhelmed. They had to divert ships to suppress rebellions instead of pursuing human raiders. Commanders had to choose between hunting enemies and defending their own bases. The Empire was being torn apart from within, but the Jatek were adapting. They began positioning decoy facilities, locations that appear exposed but were actually heavily defended. The human 7th Strike Group jumped into what looked like an unguarded supply depot and found themselves facing a Jatek battle group. Marcus watched the tactical feed as the 7th fought desperately. They were outgunned 5-1. The commander was Lieutenant Sarah Chun, the Prime Minister's daughter. She'd insisted on serving despite her mother's objections. 7th Strike Group, this is Webb. Pull back. Don't engage. Jump to emergency coordinates. Negative, Commander. Chen's voice came back, strained but steady. They're disrupting our hyperspace drives. We need 90 seconds to break through. Then you burn conventional engines for those 90 seconds. Marcus ordered. Full reverse thrust. Get out of their weapons range. Sir, we can take them. That's an order, Lieutenant. Retreat. He watched as the 7th Strike Group reversed course and accelerated hard away from the ambush. The Jatek gave chase, but the human vessels were faster. After 87 agonizing seconds, the 7th jumped to safety. Marcus exhaled slowly. That had been far too close. Sir, incoming transmission from Velcroth, the communications officer said. He's broadcasting on all frequencies. Velcroth's face appeared on screen, his expression triumphant. Commander Webb, did you think we would not learn from your tactics? That was just the first trap. We have 20 more positioned throughout our territory. Eventually, you will spring one you cannot escape. And when you do, I will personally watch your vessel burn. The transmission ended. Around the bridge, the crew looked troubled. If the Jatek were setting traps, their mission had just become significantly more perilous. He's bluffing, Dr. Tanaka said, analyzing the tactical data. They don't have the resources to adequately defend 20 facilities, while also managing rebellions and pursuing our other groups. Perhaps 5 genuine traps, at most. That's still 5 chances for our people to die. Marcus said, we need to revise our tactics. No more targeting obvious locations. From now on, we focus on attacks with secondary effects. Like what? Admiral Rodriguez asked. Marcus pulled up a display of the Jatek mining operations. Asteroid mining is automated, correct? Processing stations that take raw ore and refine it into usable materials. Yes, and they're usually lightly defended because they're so remote. Exactly, Marcus said. But what happens if we don't destroy the stations? What if we reprogram them? Understanding appeared on the intelligence officer's face. We convert them into obstacles. Use their mining lasers and processing equipment to fragment the asteroids into calculated chunks, then position them along shipping routes. The Dominion uses predictable transit corridors. Marcus continued. If we position these modified asteroids along those corridors, we create a debris field that makes hyperspace travel dangerous. They'll have to reroute their entire logistics network. That could take months. It's elegant, Tanaka said. We turn their own resources into barriers. And they can't simply eliminate the stations because they need them for production. More than that, Marcus added, each station we reprogram is one more thing they have to monitor. They'll have to send ships to inspect every station, verify it hasn't been compromised. That stretches them even thinner. The revised strategy was implemented over the following weeks. Human strike groups stopped demolishing facilities and started taking them over. Mining stations became automated weapons platforms. Communications relays were infiltrated to broadcast resistance messages. Processing facilities were reprogrammed to manufacture defective equipment that would fail under operational stress. The Jatek Dominion had conquered 847 worlds over 10,000 years of expansion. They had confronted countless enemies and defeated them all. But they had never faced an adversary like humanity, an adversary that didn't fight for territory or resources, but fought to break them psychologically. an adversary that turned their own infrastructure into a weapon. In a command center, Velcroth watched his empire deteriorate one piece at a time. His officers brought him reports of failures, defections, and defeats. 3 more worlds in open rebellion. 7 supply lines severed. A fleet commander executed for incompetence. Another loss of what his troops were calling space madness, driven to paranoia by months of pursuing phantoms. He pulled up footage of Marcus Webb, studying the human's face. This was the diplomat who had stood in the council chamber and attempted to negotiate peace. The man Velcroth had mocked for his weakness. Now that same man was systematically dismantling everything Velcroth had spent his life constructing. We underestimated them. His second-in-command said quietly, the intelligence assessments were flawed. The humans aren't primitives. They're predators who are pretending to be prey. No, Velcroth said slowly, understanding finally surfacing. They weren't pretending. They genuinely wanted peace. Webb meant every word he said in that chamber. We could have negotiated. We could have found common ground. He turned to his officer. But we chose to make them remember what they used to be. We reminded them that they're the species that survived the death world by becoming its apex predator. What do we do, Commander? Velcroth stared at the tactical display, showing human strikes across his territory like a spreading wound. We fight, he said. We fight until one of us is broken, because I made this war personal, and humans never forget personal grievances. He pulled up a star chart showing the estimated position of the human fleet. Send word to all commanders. I want every available ship concentrated in the Taralka sector. That's where the humans will strike next. I know because that's where our largest fuel processing facility is located, and they've been methodically targeting our supply network. We're going to give them exactly what they want. A clear, seemingly vulnerable target. Another trap, Commander? The final trap? Velcroth said, I'm going to stake everything on this one gamble. Either we destroy their fleet or we forfeit this war. There's no middle ground anymore. His officer hesitated. Commander, Supreme Council member Ratan sent orders. He wants you to consider negotiating with the humans, offering reparations for Proxima Tertius in exchange for peace. Velcroth's laugh was hollow. You think Webb would accept that? After everything we've done? After we killed 6,000 of his people? He shook his head. No! This ends only one way now, with one of us shattered beyond repair. He activated the communication system, sending directives to every Jotech military commander. Prepare for the largest fleet engagement in Dominion history. We're going to show these humans what happens when they push us too far. We're going to show them what the Dominion does to adversaries who challenge our empire. In the Taralka sector, the trap was set. 300 Jotech warships waited in concealed positions around the fuel processing facility. The largest concentration of military force the Dominion had assembled in 2 centuries. And across the galaxy, Marcus Webb studied intelligence reports on Taralka, knowing perfectly well it was a trap, knowing that Velcroth expected him to recognize it as a trap, and planning his response accordingly, because that was the nature of traps. Sometimes you enter them deliberately, not because you were reckless, but because you had a strategy to reverse the trap against the hunter. The human fleet jumped toward Taralka, and the next phase of the war began. Million, Lieutenant Chin gasped. Dr. Tanaka pulled up sensor readings. The fuel facility was largely automated, minimal staff, perhaps 5,000 Jotech personnel at most. But the planet below, she went pale. The planet was inhabited, 3 million colonists. The radiation from the detonation would have reached the surface. Marcus felt ice settle in his stomach. He had reviewed the intelligence on Taralka. The facility was designated as automated with minimal personnel. Nothing about a populated planet nearby. Pull up every intelligence file we have on Taralka. Now. Dr. Tanaka worked urgently. Sir, the records show the planet was designated for colonization, but listed as uninhabited. Settlement wasn't scheduled to begin for another 5 years. Velcroth relocated colonists there. Admiral Rodriguez said slowly, realization emerging. He knew we'd target the facility. He placed civilians on the planet below as leverage. If we attacked, we'd kill millions. And if we didn't, We'd walk into his ambush with no way out. Marcus stared at the tactical display, grasping the full scale of what had just occurred. Velcroth had used his own people as human shields, and Marcus had killed them regardless. 3 million, he whispered. I just killed 3 million people. You didn't know they were there, Chin said urgently. This is on Velcroth. He placed them in harm's way. Does that matter? Marcus asked. They're still dead because of a decision I made. More transmissions were arriving. The Kelthra resistance celebrating the Dominion's defeat. Other conquered species, seeing this as evidence that the Jatek could be beaten. And from Jatek territory, messages of horror and fury over civilian deaths. Then came the transmission Marcus had been dreading. Velcroth appeared on screen, and Marcus barely recognized him. The proud warrior appeared broken. His scales were dull, his eyes hollow. You killed them, Velcroth said, his voice barely audible. 3 million of my people, civilians, families, children. I didn't know they were there. Marcus said, your intelligence designated the planet as uninhabited. Would it have changed anything if you'd known? Velcroth asked. Would you have turned away from such a decisive target? Or would you have told yourself it was necessary, that the outcome justified the means? Marcus had no answer, because Velcroth was right. If he had known, he would likely have struck anyway, because the alternative was watching his own fleet perish. This is what you intended to teach me, isn't it? Velcroth continued. The cost of war. What happens when someone drives humans past their limits? He laughed bitterly. Congratulations, Commander. You've succeeded. I understand now. I understand that you're exactly as merciless as you warned you could be. If you want to surrender, Marcus began. Surrender? Velcroth's laugh turned hollow. To the species that just killed 3 million of my people? Do you know what would happen if I attempted that? My own officers would execute me for cowardice. The Dominion Council would have my family destroyed, and the public would tear me apart with their hands. He leaned toward the camera. No, Commander Webb, there is no surrender now. Not for you, not for me. We fight until one of us is completely broken, because that's what total war signifies. It means there's no reversing course. No negotiation, no peace. Only victory or annihilation. The transmission ended. Marcus stood motionless, staring at the blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew looked equally shaken. Sir, what are our orders? The helmsman asked quietly. Marcus drew a slow breath. He wanted to halt everything. Wanted to find some means of ending this before more lives were lost. But Velcroth was correct. They had gone too far. Both sides had too much blood on their hands to stop now. We continue, he said finally. We finish what we started. Over the next 3 weeks, the war intensified to levels of brutality that shocked the galaxy. Jatek forces, desperate and vengeful, launched strikes against human colonies. They couldn't match Earth's military anymore, but they could kill civilians. New Harmony was bombarded. Eden's Gate was invaded. Human forces responded by supporting rebellions across Dominion space. 17 worlds erupted in coordinated uprisings. The Jatek military, already devastated by the Taralka Disaster, couldn't contain them all. Marcus directed the strikes from the Retribution, barely resting, barely eating. He monitored the casualty reports as they climbed. Human dead, Jatek dead, Kelthra, Vrelka, and a dozen other species caught in the crossfire. Dr. Tanaka found him in his quarters one night, staring at an image of Proxima Tertius before the bombardment. Children playing in a park. Families walking through gardens. You need to rest, sir, she said gently. I can't, Marcus said. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. The people on Taralka. 3 million faces I'll never know. 3 million names I'll never learn. All dead because of my orders. Because of Velcroth. Tanaka said firmly. He initiated this war. He made it personal when he obliterated Proxima Tertius. And I concluded it by killing 3 million of his people. Marcus said, Tanaka, be honest with me. Am I still the righteous party in this story? Or have I become exactly what I was trying to stop? The intelligence officer sat down across from him. I don't think there are righteous parties in total war, sir. They're just people trying to protect their own. You did what you believed was necessary to preserve humanity. That doesn't make it right, but it doesn't make it wrong either. It simply makes it war. A communication alert interrupted them. Lieutenant Chen appeared on screen, her expression urgent. Sir, you need to see this. We're receiving reports from the Jatek homeworld. Something has happened. Marcus and Tanaka rushed the bridge. When they arrived, they found the entire crew assembled around a transmission from Thar Prime, the Dominion capital. The footage showed chaos. Jatek citizens in the streets, some celebrating, others fighting, buildings burning, military units clashing with each other. And in the center of it all, High Commander Velcrota's flagship had crashed into the Capitol Plaza. A new face appeared on the transmission. A Jatek female, wearing commander insignia. Human fleet, this is Commander Sheltek, second in command of the Dominion military. I am broadcasting on all frequencies to announce that High Commander Velcroth has been removed from command and taken into custody. She paused, her expression weary. The Dominion Council has authorized me to negotiate a ceasefire with Earth. We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender. The bridge erupted in stunned murmurs. Surrender. After 6 months of brutal warfare, the Jatek Dominion was offering to capitulate. Marcus stared at the screen, feeling nothing. Not triumph, not relief, only exhaustion. Shall I respond, sir? The communications officer asked. Marcus thought about Proxima Tertius, about Taralka, about all the worlds caught between them, all the lives destroyed because two prideful individuals couldn't find a better resolution. Tell Commander Sheltek we'll hear their terms, he said finally, but make it clear that this isn't concluded until we have justice for Proxima Tertius and assurances that the Dominion will never threaten humanity again. And Velcroth, Admiral Rodriguez asked, what do we do about him? Marcus looked at the image of the crashed flagship, contemplating the man who had initiated all of this, the warrior who had ridiculed humanity's weakness, the commander who had killed 6,000 humans to make a point. He faces tribunal. Marcus said, war crimes proceedings. Open, transparent. He answers for Proxima Tertius. And I answer for Taralka. The crew stared at him in disbelief. Sir, you can't, Chen began. Yes, I can. Marcus interrupted. 3 million people died because of my decision. I don't get to conceal that. If Velcro faces justice, so do I. That's what honor requires. That's what distinguishes us from them. He turned to Rodriguez. Admiral, assume command of the fleet. Coordinate with Commander Sheltek on ceasefire terms. I'm going to Thara Prime to negotiate the peace personally. That's extremely dangerous. Dr. Tanaka protested. You'd be entirely at their discretion. I know, Marcus said, but someone has to end this war, and it should be the person who allowed it to become what it became. As the Retribution prepared to jump to the Jatek homeworld, Marcus stood at the viewport one final time, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was watching, waiting to see if humans and Jatek would find peace or destroy each other entirely. He thought about what he had told Velcroth that day in the council chamber, about how humans had climbed to the pinnacle of Earth's food chain, about what they became when driven past their limits. He had been right, but being right hadn't made the cost any easier to carry. Take us in, he ordered quietly. Let's end this war one way or another. The Retribution emerged from hyperspace above Thara Prime, and Marcus Webb got his first view of the Dominion homeworld. It was striking in a severe way. Purple oceans, dark continents, 3 moons suspended in a deep red sky. Under different circumstances, he might have appreciated its alien beauty. Instead, all he could consider was the 3 million people who had perished on Taralka. Sir, we're being hailed by planetary defense. Lieutenant Chen reported. They're requesting confirmation of your identity and purpose. Tell them Supreme Commander Marcus Webb is here to negotiate peace terms with Commander Sheltek. I'm coming down alone. Alone? Admiral Rodriguez appeared on the communication screen from his vessel. Marcus, that's reckless. You'll be surrounded by people who want you dead. I know, Marcus said calmly. But if I bring an armed escort, it communicates that I don't trust them. That's no foundation for peace negotiations. This has to be built on trust, not force. After everything that's happened, you believe trust is achievable? Marcus smiled sadly. No, but we have to attempt it anyway, because the alternative is fighting until one of us no longer exists. I've witnessed enough death, Admiral. I'm done with killing. An hour later, Marcus stood in a shuttle descending toward the capital city. Through the viewport, he could observe the damage from the recent fighting. Buildings with blast marks, crash vessels, fires still burning in some districts. The Jatek had been fighting each other as much as they'd been fighting humanity. The shuttle landed in a military complex on the outskirts of the city. As the ramp descended, Marcus straightened his uniform and walked out to meet his hosts. A group of Jatek soldiers waited, their weapons ready, but not aimed at him. Behind them stood Commander Sheltek. She was smaller than Velcroth, but her presence was equally commanding. Her scales were deep blue, marked with scars that spoke of many engagements. When she spoke, her voice carried authority that needed no translation device. Commander Webb, you're either very courageous or very reckless to come here alone. Probably both. Marcus admitted. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I did not do it for you. Sheltek said directly. I did it because my people are depleted, because 17 of our worlds are in open rebellion, because our military is destroyed and our economy is collapsing, because if this war persists, the Dominion will cease to exist. She gestured toward a building. Come, the council is waiting, and so is Velcroth. Marcus followed her through corridors lined with armed guards. They all watched him with contempt. He was a human who had killed millions of their people, the adversary who had fractured their empire. If Sheltek gave the signal, they would destroy him without hesitation. The council chamber was immense, with walls that displayed the night sky overhead. 5 Jatek elders sat on elevated platforms, looking down at Marcus with expressions ranging from hostility to resignation. And in the center of the room, surrounded by guards, stood Velcroth. The former High Commander appeared devastated. His scales were dull and cracked. His arms were bound in restraints, but his eyes still burned with fury when he saw Marcus. So the human comes to observe his conquests. Velcroth said bitterly, to witness the mighty dominion laid low by primitives and their dishonorable tactics. I came to end the war. Marcus said quietly, that's all. Supreme Councilman Rattan spoke, his ancient voice resonating through the chamber. Commander Webb, we have summoned you here to discuss terms of peace, but first we require your account. This council is determining Velcroth's fate. He stands accused of crimes against the Dominion, of reckless military conduct, of deploying civilian populations as shields, of failures that nearly shattered our civilization. And what a human! Velcroth demanded. He killed 3 million of our people. Where are the charges against him? There will be charges. Marcus said, startling everyone present. I'm not evading what I did at Taralka. I made a tactical decision that resulted in catastrophic civilian casualties. That constitutes a war crime, and I should face justice for it. The council members exchanged glances. Clearly, they hadn't anticipated that response. You acknowledge your guilt? Rattan asked carefully. I acknowledge my responsibility. Marcus corrected. Guilt implies I had superior options available. I did not. Your fleet was positioned to eliminate my ships. The intelligence I possessed indicated Taralka was uninhabited. But that changes nothing about the outcome. 3 million people died because of my orders. I must answer for that. How admirable, Velcroth said with contempt. The human warrior performing honor. But we both know the reality, don't we, Webb? You did what you had to do, precisely as I did at Proxima Tertius. We are identical, you and I, both willing to kill millions for what we believe in. Marcus met his gaze steadily. No, Velcroth, we aren't the same. You attacked Proxima Tertius to demonstrate political dominance, to show the galaxy what occurs when someone defies a dominion. Those 6,000 people died because of your pride. At Taralka, I was attempting to conclude the war to prevent further casualties. I committed a catastrophic error, but my motivation was defense, not conquest. Motivation? Velcroth laughed harshly. You believe motivation matters to the dead, to the families who were incinerated, to the children who will never reach adulthood? No, Marcus said quietly. Motivation doesn't matter to them. That's precisely why I'm willing to face Tribunal. That's why I'm here in your capital, surrounded by people who despise me, because the dead deserve accountability, even if accountability costs me my life. The chamber fell completely silent. Even Velcroth appeared unable to respond. Commander Sheltek stepped forward. The council must deliberate on several matters. Velcroth's fate, Webb's fate, and the terms of peace between our civilizations. Let us begin with testimony. Commander Webb, describe how this war began from your perspective. For the next 3 hours, Marcus provided his account. He described the council meeting where the Jatek demanded surrender of human colonies, the threats Velcroth issued, the destruction of Proxima Tertius, his authorization of total war protocols, every engagement, every choice, every devastating moment that had led them to this point. Then Velcroth testified. He described the perspective of humanity's expansion, his belief that the Dominion needed to act before humans became too formidable, the Council authorization for force, his decision to make an example of Proxima Tertius. I wanted them to respect us. Velcroth said, to understand that the Dominion was not be defied. I believed one demonstration of force would suffice, that they would surrender the remaining colonies and accept a position in the galactic order. Instead, you created an adversary willing to sacrifice everything to defeat you. Rattan said coldly, yes. Velcroth admitted, I underestimated them. I believed diplomats were without strength. I didn't comprehend that humans only became diplomats because they were attempting to transcend what they once were. When I provoked them, they returned to their nature, and their nature is terrifying. 6 months later, Marcus stood in a very different chamber. This was a galactic tribunal, a neutral court where representatives from 15 different species had gathered to assess his conduct at Taralka. He testified for 3 days, responding to every question, providing every detail about his decision-making process. The judges deliberated for a week. When they returned, their verdict was carefully considered. Yes, Marcus had caused the deaths of 3 million civilians. Yes, he should have verified the intelligence regarding Taralka more rigorously. But they also recognized the context of the conflict, the severe time constraints he had faced, and Velcroth's deliberate use of civilians as protection. The sentence was as follows. Marcus Webb would serve 5 years in a neutral facility assisting in the reconstruction of worlds damaged by the war. He would apply a strategic mind to coordinate humanitarian operations rather than military ones. It was a penalty, but also a path toward redemption. Marcus accepted the judgment without objection. 3 years later, Marcus supervised the construction of a new city on Keldar Prime, one of the worlds that had risen against the Dominion. The Kelthara had secured their independence through the peace agreement. Now, they were building a new society, and Marcus was helping them design infrastructure intended to endure for generations. A young Kelthara approached him one afternoon, carrying a small memorial stone. Commander Webb, I wanted to express my gratitude. My family was freed because of what you did, because you fought for us. Marcus looked at the stone. It bore names. Kelthara who had perished in a rebellion fighting for liberty. I didn't fight for you. Marcus said gently, I fought for humanity. Your freedom was a consequence, not an objective. Does that distinction matter? The young Kelthara asked. You still helped us. Marcus reflected on that. About consequences and motivations, about whether the good that emerged from terrible actions somehow offset the harm. I don't know. He admitted, I'm still working through that question. 2 more years elapsed. Marcus completed his sentence and was released. He returned to Earth, to Montana, to the ranch where he had been raised. It had been maintained by his family, preserved exactly as he remembered it. He spent his days working the land, repairing fences, tending livestock, simple labor requiring no tactical decisions or strategic calculations. At night, he sat on the porch and contemplated the stars, thinking about everything that had occurred. The galaxy had changed. The Jatek Dominion had fragmented into smaller states, some more democratic than others. Dozens of species had achieved independence. The Galactic Council had restructured with humans now holding a permanent seat and veto authority. The balance of power had shifted entirely, but the cost had been enormous. 6,000 human dead, on Proxima Tertius, 3 million Jatek dead on Taralka, countless others caught in the crossfire, entire worlds destabilized, generations marked by war. One evening, Marcus received an unexpected visitor, an elderly Jatek. Scales faded with age, approached his porch. It required Marcus a moment to recognize him. Velcroth, the former High Commander, appeared nothing like the proud warrior Marcus recalled. Imprisonment had diminished him physically, but something else inhabited his eyes now. Comprehension, perhaps, or remorse. "Commander Webb," Velcroth said, his voice rough from long silence. "May I sit?" Marcus indicated a chair. They sat together in silence, watching the sun descend over the Montana landscape. "They released me," Velcroth said eventually. "Medical circumstances. I don't have much time remaining. I'm sorry." "Don't be. I merit worse than this." Velcroth looked at Marcus. "I came here to tell you something. In confinement, I had time to reflect on what I did, on why I did it, on what followed." He paused. "I told myself I was protecting the Dominion, that humanity represented a threat requiring containment. But the reality is more fundamental. I was afraid that humans would surpass us, afraid that the Dominion's 10,000 years of supremacy would conclude. So I struck out, attempting to prevent the inevitable, and in doing so, I annihilated everything I had dedicated my life to preserving." Marcus remained silent. There was nothing to offer. "You asked me once if I understood what I was awakening." Velcroth continued. "I did not. I believed I was confronting primitives. Instead, I was confronting a species that had endured 10,000 years of their own worst impulses, a species that had learned to focus their violence into something precise and devastating." He looked at the stars. "I roused something that should have remained dormant, and 3 million of my people paid the price for my arrogance. 6,000 of mine paid for yours." Marcus said quietly, "Yes." Velcroth agreed. "We are both responsible for atrocities that will persist in history. The only distinction is that you attempted to be something better first. I never did." They remained together until darkness fell completely. When Velcroth finally rose to depart, he offered Marcus one final reflection. "The young ones on both our worlds want to make us heroes or villains, to declare that one of us was right and the other wrong. Don't permit them to. Ensure they understand that we were both wrong. That war, even when unavoidable, diminishes everyone it touches. That the price of victory can be too steep even when you prevail." Marcus watched the elderly Jatek walk away into the darkness. He never encountered Velcroth again. The former High Commander passed away 3 weeks later, alone in a modest dwelling on a remote colony world. Years accumulated. Marcus aged gracefully on his ranch, rarely speaking about the war. But occasionally young officers from Earth's military would visit seeking guidance. He always told them the same thing. Never lose sight of the fact that the enemy is someone else's family, someone else's friend, someone else's child. War should always be the final option, because once it begins, you cannot govern what you become. I went to war to preserve humanity, and I succeeded, but the price was becoming something less than human myself. He would show them recordings of Proxima Tertius burning, of Taralka's detonation, of all the deaths and devastation. "This is what war resembles when you win," he would say. "Remember that, remember the price, and dedicate everything you have to finding another way." On his 80th birthday, Marcus received a communication from the Galactic Council. They were establishing a memorial for all those who died in the Human Jehatek War. They requested his contribution to the design. Marcus considered carefully before responding. Finally, he transmitted a single sentence. "Ensure it shows everyone's faces. The dead deserve to be remembered as individuals, not numbers." The memorial was constructed on a neutral world visible from the surrounding systems. It displayed the faces of every confirmed casualty from both sides. 6,000 humans from Proxima Tertius, 3 million Jatek from Taralka, tens of thousands more from other engagements and uprisings. Each face was distinct, unique, human or alien, but equally gone. At the center was a simple inscription rendered in multiple languages. "Here we remember the cost of pride, the price of fear and the wages of war. May those who follow us find wisdom we could not. Marcus visited the memorial only once, at its dedication. He walked among the faces, recognizing some, strangers to others. He paused at a section displaying children from Taralka, so young, so innocent, all gone because two commanders couldn't discover a better path. He placed flowers at the memorial and spoke quietly to the dead. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry your deaths were part of ending the war. I'm sorry that prevailing meant transforming into the kind of person who could order your deaths and continue living afterward. An elderly Kelthera approached him. She had lost family in the rebellions. Commander Webb, do you regret what you did? Initiating the war? Marcus looked at her. I regret that it was unavoidable. But no, I don't regret fighting. Velcroth murdered 6,000 of my people and would have murdered more. Someone had to stop him. I simply wish there had been a means to accomplish that without becoming what I became. You liberated dozens of worlds, the Kelthera said, gave millions their freedom, shattered an empire that had oppressed the galaxy for centuries. Doesn't that mean something? Does it balance 3 million dead? Marcus asked, can any act of goodness counterbalance that much death? I don't know. I've been seeking an answer for decades. Perhaps none exists. Perhaps we simply have to carry the complexity. He returned his gaze to the memorial. I do know this. The next time humanity confronts a threat, I hope they find someone better than me to lead them, someone who can prevail without forfeiting their soul in the process. Marcus Webb lived to the age of 93. He died peacefully in his sleep on his ranch in Montana, beneath the stars he had once fought among. His funeral was attended by humans and aliens alike, former adversaries standing together to honor a man who had been simultaneously hero and something darker. His tombstone was understated. Marcus Webb, diplomat, warrior, human. He fought so others wouldn't have to. In the decades following his death, historians debated his legacy. Some labeled him a war criminal. Others called him a savior. The truth, as always, was more layered than either. The galaxy he left behind was unlike the one he had inherited, more free, more democratic, but also more fully aware of humanity's capacity for violence. Other species regarded Earth with measured respect, mindful of what humans were capable of when driven past their limits. And on Proxima Tertius, rebuilt through Jatek reparations and human determination, children played in parks and gardens. They didn't know the names of those who had perished there, didn't grasp the price that had been paid for their peaceful existence. Perhaps that was as it should be. The next generation shouldn't bear the weight of the past. They should construct something better. In a museum on Earth, Marcus Webb's uniform hung in a display case. On the wall beside it rested his final report to Earth Command, composed in the weeks after the war concluded. We won. We preserved humanity from an empire that sought to dominate us. But the victory carried a cost I never anticipated. We demonstrated that we could fight as ruthlessly as any civilization in the galaxy. We proved we could win through intelligence, determination, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary. To the next generation, we fought so you wouldn't have to. We became weapons so you could remain human. Remember Proxima Tertius. Remember Taralka. Remember what we did and why we did it, and never, ever permit it to happen again. Find a better way. Be the humans we should have been. The end.